All right. Well, we've done 3 of our top 3 categories. We've done a lot of different topics. I think it's time for one of my favorite new segments on our retrospective, Listener Mail.
Woo, woo, woo!
I'm bracing. I'm bracing with a clenched asshole in this moment.
Ooh.
I'll start with something really positive and personal. It's less about the show, more about other stuff. This is
Jordan sounds like Jerry Seinfeld. We can't hear Paul. What do they got? What do they want?
Craig writes in from Facebook. I'm listening to the Season 2 recap, and someone mentioned Patsy's Bakery. I noticed that's the second Lindenhurst mention. My parents moved to Lindenhurst when they were kids, and I lived there until I was 14.
A local.
I brought cookies home from Patsy's for my wife and kids when I went back in 2021. We always used to go there for Italian ices in the summer.
That's the same place. My man, my hometown boy.
So you're your buddy Craig there. That's
my
nice.
buddy Craig.
Thank you for writing in, Craig, and thank you for listening. Right. We love Patsy's. It keeps our dessert vibe going here for Jordan. Basically,
we have some choy elf right after the show.
Lily and I handle the entree. Paul usually brings snacks, appetizers, hors d'oeuvre, and Jordan brings dessert from Patsy's, and we love it. It's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Mick. I generally, unless you specify, don't want to give last names on these. Just so if you want us to use your
just read their home address. Yeah.
But Mick emailed the show with the email subject sperm smuggling.
Oh no!
I think this one's actually directed to you, Jordan, because I think you.
I really did not. I did not think this was possible.
This is the simple text of the email. Back in 1996, reputed mobster Georgie Neck Zappola bribed a guard to smuggle his sperm out of a penitentiary.
All right.
I verified that.
That's our Snapple Cap fact.
I verified that, and it did in fact happen. So.
All right. This has been Children's Fun Fact Science Corner.
So that is credible.
Thank you, Mick. All right. I listen. I was wrong. Apparently, it's real. That's pretty fucked up.
They do that a lot on Oz.
Do they?
Yeah, it's like mostly true stories just congealed into this one moment at a prison.
You had to say congealed around the sperm conversation.
But some of the most ridiculous stories from Oz were totally real. It's just...
Wow, that's funny. Thank you, Mick. I got it.
We got a question here from Sean. Hey, Chris. Just wanted to reach out for a couple reasons. First, you guys do a great job. I'm really enjoying your podcast. I'm a super fan like yourself, and so it's so nice to listen to someone who sees the show like I do. So thank you. Second, I want to ask you this because I've argued with my brother about this for years. You guys haven't covered this episode yet, but in all due respect, Season 5, Episode 13, when Tony makes his speech at Raymond's birthday in front of the whole crew about Tony B, and at the end when Patsy says, thanks, that was great. Was he being sincere, or was he being a smartass? I have my opinion, and I would like to hear yours. Again, I know you didn't cover this yet, but I know you know the scene. Thanks again. Keep up the tremendous work. So, Sean and... First of all, thank you, Sean. Second of all, Sean and... What was it? His brother or his friend?
His brother.
His brother have been arguing about this for years. So I want to help settle this. Is Patsy genuine, or is he being a smartass there?
He's a smartass. It's fatalistic. Like, they're fucked, and they all know it. And Tony's in there, like, trying to do the pep him up, and Patsy's saying to the blank wall, thanks, that was great.
I totally agree.
I disagree.
I also disagree.
Hell yeah.
I think Patsy's being genuine. I think since they had the big talking to Patsy, after Patsy almost killed Tony, by the way, I think publicly he expresses only support. I think it's legitimate. I think he hears Tony's words, and I whether he thinks it's hollow or not, the outward expression of those words is, hey, thanks. Yeah, thank you.
It's just...
I'm sorry, I'm stopping this. You guys are so completely off.
No,
we need to put the episode in.
Legit.
We need to put the episode in right now so you can hear the tone in his voice and realize how wrong you are.
Hold on.
This is not... I'm not having this conversation.
Paul, that was... I read his vocal tone as reverent, like
Yeah.
Like somebody just watched a flag being raised.
I
It's
agree.
very patriotic.
I think it's performative, but I think he is supporting.
That was great. Isn't it?
Fuck am I talking to?
Yeah, no, I'm totally
This
team
is
Paul on that one.
I'm sorry, you guys are.
You guys are full of baloney.
You guys
Absolutely
are fucking
not.
whistling.
I'm not.
discs.
How funny is it? How funny is it that he's the only one at this table who loved it? I think that's great.
Nah.
Everyone's looks
yes,
at him like,
that
what?
would be funny if that's what were happening.
I think he's into it. I
What's
think
funny
he's not
is
that
this
smart.
reaction.
All right, well, Sean, you may have ruined the. We may not be coming back. This fight is going to carry off. So we settled nothing for you and your brother.
Thanks for listening. Thank you, Sean. That was great.
We haven't.
See, that's how that line works.
Paul's fired up. Can you hear him now, everybody? Oh fuck!
And for the record, I grew up 2 towns over from Seinfeld. Okay, we can't help it.
That's right, Pequot.
That's right.
This is an email from a different Sean.
Ooh, a lot of shots.
I'm reading this purely. This must have been one of the weeks there was an.
Is this Sean rhymes with Bon or Sean rhymes with Bean?
Sean rhymes with Bean.
Okay.
This one is. This one is not. Well, let's just say this must have been one of the weeks where there was an extra week or so in between episodes.
Uh-oh.
And I just want to read it because I really love the way he worded it, just asking when the next episode is going to be. The subject is this about the Easter podcasts, and it was around Easter time. And the first line of the email, I want to know why there's zero growth in this podcast receipts. Where's the fucking episode? Oh, man. Jokes aside, is there an episode coming? Been listening for a bit. Was hoping for a new one this week. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Sean, for the laugh. Really appreciated that. The episode did eventually drop. Probably not on a holiday week. I will tell you this, folks. Officially, we come out every 2 weeks. Every other Sunday. If there's a holiday week, that is likely going to jam it up. Lily and I, we work, all of us here work a full-time schedule, if not more, because we have a lot of extracurricular interests, and one of them is this podcast, which we will always do, and we will always put out. We are going to finish the episodes. We are going to finish this show. But on a holiday weekend, sometimes it's a little tough for me to, walk away from a food-abundant barbecue or something to come in and edit. So, especially during the summer. So, sorry about that. We are going to keep it coming.
We have no abundant intentionality of working on holidays.
Listen, we've said this many times. We started this podcast in the pandemic. We were able to bank a huge number of episodes and release them responsibly every 2 weeks. Then life came roaring back in. We do not live close to each other. It's hard to just come out of life sometimes to record, and sometimes things get delayed. It's not anybody's fault. It's just how it is. We would love nothing more than to keep recording together consistently and release all the episodes on time. It's just not how it's going to be, probably. I don't know. We'll see.
If only it were just as simple as drag and drop. Squarespace, you should sponsor us.
I could really go for some Sunbasket right now.
I love the wording of that email, though.
Right. Oh, it's fantastic.
Beautiful.
Okay, this one is from Alyssa. Hey guys, just finished listening to Season 5, Episode 3, wherein you had a rather long rant about Janice and Bobby policing Bobby Jr.'s diet, which had me yelling at my phone. I'm not caught up with you guys yet, so I don't know if you've corrected yourself, but my dudes, Janice took away the chocolate milk, and Bobby said go easy on the Snapple, because as you mentioned previously in the episode, much to AJ's delight, Bobby Jr. has started peeing the bed again.
Yeah.
They're nagging at him because they don't want him pissing the bed that night. Nothing to do with his weight. Whew, I feel better now that I got that out. Thanks for this podcast. I've listened to a lot of Sopranos podcasts. This is one of the better ones. Keep up the good work, guys. Alyssa.
Well, thanks, Alyssa.
Thank you for that, Alyssa.
Yeah, I think we may have addressed that since then, by the way. Yes, it's probably more likely that it is his wetting the bed that is the problem, but there is something up with the food there, too. Or maybe it's just because of my own experiences, it reminded me of something to that effect.
I don't know if I talked about this at the time. Did I talk about my incident with where my uncle pulled away a plate of food from me?
Yeah, you did.
He did that because he's a cheap son of a bitch, and it was like clam pasta, okay?
Yeah.
It had seafood on it. I felt a different way about it because I was a fat kid.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he's taking this from me. I should stop eating. So I think it could be both. I felt for him as a fat little boy, like getting a food item you're about to consume taken away from you sucks. But your interpretation, Alyssa, is 1,000% valid. In fact,
it's probably the one. Yeah.
Hi, Alyssa. Thanks for writing in. I think it's a very good point. When Chris mentioned it, I had not thought of that being a connective tissue. My gentle pushback would be in the form of a question: why does Bobby Jr. piss the bed? Why does he experience anxiety? What's going on with him? Among other things, his mother's died. His father remarried. He remarried the woman that he did. Who, among other things, reveals secrets that are the kid's own business to another 15-year-old punk shithead who thinks it's so funny, in spite of the fact that he was pissing the bed 3 years ago at summer camp. And yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem that the kid has, but Janice, as his stepmother, I think makes it worse. Mm-hmm. Sorry to say, but I think all the criticisms of Janice still stand.
Yeah. Of course.
Absolutely. David writes in, "Hey guys, big fan of the podcast. I love that you continue to discuss the show, one of the great TV novels, so intelligently and engagingly. It makes it seem as if it is still airing and still vital. As a former resident of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area, I grew up in Connecticut, lived on the coast for decades. I also really love the local details you drop about shooting locations, settings, and your experience in creative fields. Great stuff. Thank you, David. I have to say that for me, Season 5 is the season that most rewards return viewings, and I feel it has the richest set of one-off characters who either take a one-episode spin with huge effect, or drop in after a reference from a previous season to close a plot loop.
Sure.
But I wonder if you might have a category for Season 5 in your retrospective to rank the top 3 low-key, high-impact characters along these lines. I discount Tony B as he has a full arc. Standouts here are, to my mind, Sung-Young Kim, Mr. Wegler, Fran Felstein, Matush, Feech, and Russ Fagoli. There are more like Sal Vitro or Uncle Pat, of course. Matush is my number 1, with number 2 being Feech, and Sung-Young Kim for number 3, in that he's just in one episode, but he seems like he has much more screen time. At any rate, I would also honorably mention Russ Fagoli, as I am one of those viewers of the opinion that he's Paulie Walnut's unacknowledged dad. What? That is a fan theory that we can't get into yet, but we will discuss.
Okay.
Would love to hear what you guys think. In any case, thanks for reading and keep up the great podcasting. Thoughts on his general point about these low-key, high-impact characters? Russ Fagoli certainly made an impression. These characters this season, there seem to be an abundance of them. David's right that these one-off characters like Mr. Kim, who has a great episode with Tony B, and then it's a one and done basically.
Seems like a Korean Tony, the boss.
Right? Yeah.
Listen, the casting in The Sopranos is off the fucking charts, and we're not just talking about for regular returning cast members. They do an amazing job with everybody who appears. So, listen, I know what you mean. Season 5 is rich with characters who appear just briefly or that we just see once. I would even almost discount Feech, since he's featured in more than one episode. Listen, absolutely. Wegler, Feech, all these characters are really, they shape the season and they give it substance. I don't know, I'm caught unprepared on a ranking, but listen, we've already discussed at length the importance of the impact that Feech has had, that Wegler has had. I would argue for Rusty Milio, Angelo Garepe. I mean, there's a lot of minor characters that have a huge impact. Well, how about San Severino, for that matter?
Oh, yes. Hey, let's not discount San Severino. Hell yeah.
Ugh.
Well, yeah. we feel that way, yes. This is a...
You know who I would almost include before Wegler? The teacher that works for Wegler, or the teacher that works in that school. I already forget the character. Fisk. Thank you, Mr. Fisk. Who almost exactly reminds me of Vincent D'Onofrio's character from The Player, by the way. But yes, just kind of like the stick-to-your-guns English teacher who doesn't want to budge, right? And accuses Wegler of exactly what is going on, special treatment because of last name Soprano, I think is indicative of a larger issue going on. And that character made just as much impact on me in 2 scenes as Wegler did in his whole existence.
Wow. Mommy in Color 89 tweeted, or was it X'd now? It's I don't know what they call this. Twitter
I refuse to
X.
acknowledge.
Okay. I just call it X Twitter, as in ex-girlfriend. It's X Twitter.
I don't know. I literally unsubscribe from Twitter. I don't give a fuck anymore.
Mommy in Color 89 tweeted at Sopranos Podcast, listening to Season 5, Episode 9, and I agree with Paul Mike Tyson was the king of the early round knockout. Ali went the distance.
All right.
There you go. A little love for you, Paul. A lot of love for you, Paul, actually. Paul, I bet if you find her, you can shoot your shot there. Get on Twitter.
You could smuggle some of your semen out of the house.
Ladies, Paul, I want to hook Paul up. If any of you single ladies out there love The Sopranos, want to write in, please feel free to do that for our next retrospect. This is from Leah or Leah. I'm not sure. It's spelled Leah, probably Leah. Long, meaty email with some questions for you guys and Lily in all caps.
All right.
Hey guys, thanks for the podcast. I didn't actually know that much about The Sopranos before I started listening, but I really enjoy your dramaturgical spelling, psychological, and emotional breakdowns. I've also started rewatching, though I admit I'm skipping some of the more brutal episodes because you know what, life is tough enough. I hear you there. Anyway, I'm curious to hear your takes on a few questions and thoughts. I realize that some of them are in the realm of speculation, but I think that's what'll make it interesting and fun to hear you cogitate. Oh, and please have Lily be part of this discussion. So we have Lily here. If she weren't here, this would have been... She asks 2 questions and then goes on about something else. So let's do the 2 questions and let's answer them before we continue with the rest of the email. Question 1. Why do you think that in the world of the show, Junior never got married?
I think he explains it well enough. I forget which episode, and I actually misquoted it earlier. He just says that he didn't feel it was right to bring a woman into their thing. I think for him... Gangster life has always made a lot more sense than women did, so I think he just chose to excel in that one particular regard. And also, not to be unkind, but he's kind of weird with women. Like, he's kind of weird with girls. He doesn't have his brother's charm. He has romances, he has flings. He should have stayed with Bobby, didn't work out, and that's it.
I imagine if my brother were married to someone like Livia, too, I might say, oof, you know what, that's not for me. That might be part of it, I guess, but... Corrado was always skulking around the buildings and weird phone calls, right? What Fran Felstein says this season.
Yeah. I kind of respect the guys that choose not to get married because you're going to have the Gumars anyway, so might as well just, not have the trouble of doing the double thing. So, good for you, Junior and Paulie, and, do that. I think that's, if you're going to do all of this, that's the way to do it, I think.
Question.
Sorry, I just want to add one thing. I do think, Leah, that Junior is unhappy and is recognizing his unhappiness late in life. So he might have felt good about that decision not to marry, not to have a regular girl earlier, but I think he's regretting some of that now. I mean, we do see his bitterness at not having some of the things that, let's say, Hugh DeAngelis has or that Tony has, which is a family. It brings other frustrations, but... You essentially have no garden. It's a good question. I think he made a poor choice. If he were happy in his old age, by the way, I'd say, well, he made a great choice for him, but he's not.
Agreed. Yeah. That's fair.
Question number 2 is pretty fascinating, actually. Who would make the better gangster, Janice or Carmela?
Wow.
That's a hell of a question, isn't it?
I have an answer.
Talk to me.
To be fair, you've read this to me already, so
you've had a chance
to think about it. Janice would be a better heavy. Carmela would be a better boss. Carmela knows how to get what she wants with words, with manipulation. Janice can beat anybody into submission. That's how I would hire them on my family team.
I think I like that way to frame it.
I do too.
Maybe correspondingly, perhaps Carmela's weakness might be certain stern, tough decisions as opposed to being a thinker, which I do think Carmela is. I think she can strategize. And Janice's liability would probably be much more like Tony's, which is his emotionality. Mm-hmm. Actually, that there are times when you can't just react.
One thing I do want to throw in this is I think I agree fully with everything you guys just said. Chips on the table, better gangster, pick one. Probably Carmela boss, Janice as the guy out in the street. But I do want to throw a caveat in there that Carmela's moral character is less suited to gangster life than Janice.
Janice has a criminal mind.
So, yes, exactly. Yeah. So if you, in this imaginary scenario where Carmela's a better mob boss than Janice, we have to wear away at what moral scruples she does have. Because there are lines Carmela wouldn't cross that Janice absolutely crosses. I can't see Carmela shooting anybody, even if she was hit. At least not unless it was a life-threatening
And Janice, we
situation.
don't even have to put it in the hypothetical. Yeah.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I think I'd go with Carmela, but I think an argument could be made for both. I think Carmela has just a better head on her shoulders. She's more intelligent. She knows how to manipulate. She's better with politics. Yeah, she can't make hard moves, but I think that is what you delegate. Or I think that's the thing that's easier to learn. It's not like Janice is going to learn how to be smarter or to have a better brain suddenly, right? But Carmela can be taught that, I think. But again, this is all hypothetical, and I think if we can make an imaginary scenario where you can have both of them as the head, I think they actually complement each other very nicely.
Yes.
Probably for the same reasons that Carmela and Tony complement each other nicely.
Yes.
Very nice. Leah continues. One thing I appreciate is how you have talked about your evolving appreciation for the show's many themes as you've grown in life experiences and personal insights.
Now, we hate the show.
It strikes me that if my math if my math is correct, which is always an undependable thing, then when the show aired, you guys were actually around AJ's age. I think it would be interesting to try and put yourselves even more directly into your exploration of the show from that perspective. In other words, how would you, as a teenager, have experienced what's happening in the family and in the lowercase f family? I'm not trying to imply that your backgrounds or family dynamics are identical to AJ's, but as adolescents in Italian families and communities, what did you actually perceive, experience, or believe about gender roles, the mafia, race, etc.? That's a loaded question.
Well, it's a great question. It's a great question. It's a really big question that's hard to answer. There's a lot of facets there. I don't know how to give an answer that is very satisfying, other than to say my household was, I think, typical for a lot of Italian families. My father may have provided for the house, but my mother ran the household. They argued frequently. They loved passionately. I felt loved. I also was terrified of them in my own way. I think AJ goes through something similar. And I think there's an extra layer on top of his because he knows his father has another life outside of the household that is darkly alluring, shall we say. I had some cousins and uncles for which I was very suspect, and if I really looked hard enough, they probably had something to do with organized crime. Only one is confirmed. And yeah, food was very important. I think one of the reasons why all of us identify with this show is because we had a similar upbringing to, let's say, AJ or Meadow. But what's funny is, I don't even know that these things are specifically Italian things. Certain aspects for sure, right? But I think this is relatable for a lot of people. Couldn't anything I just said be applied to other households with other ethnicities, other religions, etc.? I think so.
Yeah. This is tough to admit. As AJ's age, at AJ's age, had I found out my dad was in the mob, I would have thought it was the coolest fucking thing ever.
I think he does.
Yeah. Now that's funny to say because like I'm one of the I'm so goddamn gentle. I'm too nice for my own good. I could never actually hurt somebody. Lily knows this about me. I go out of my way to think the best of people. So I don't know how that would have reconciled with me as I got older, but at that time I was in it, man. Like I was really into the mob movies, and as a 13-year-old, we joke about it here, I was in the hits and tits crowd. I wanted to, I wanted more fucking Paulie Walnuts fucking people up and who's gonna get whacked and these motherfuckers, but at the same time I was also very traditional in my ideas about gender roles and family. My mom took care of the house and the kids, and my dad went out and worked, and I always saw myself in that kind of situation. Man goes out, earns the bread, woman takes care of the house and the kids. I didn't see anything wrong with that. I didn't see anything oppressive about it. I also never believed that women had to engage in that role, but I never saw myself with somebody as a young man who wouldn't be in that kind of role. And lo and behold, my wife, because I chose the life of an actor, makes far more money than I do. So here we are.
Yeah, what's funny is I don't know that I seek to emulate the life I grew up in. I don't need that. I don't need that dynamic at all necessarily.
Not at all, yeah.
There are aspects of it I admire, but I hope to be with someone that I don't argue that much with, right? That,
I only took the food with me.
Yeah, right, exactly. I'm perfectly happy to, share a situation where me and my wife have equal income, or she makes more than me. I don't need those traditional things. In other words, I'm not really looking for what Tony has wanted, right? He's looking for something, from the past. I don't need that. But that's a really good question. With more time to respond, I think we can come up with something maybe a little deeper. But because that's a higher order question.
Yeah.
That's asking us how we analyze the things we're analyzing. Why? Really, really good question.
Certainly being part of like the hits and tits crowd when I was younger, I would certainly say that my reading of the show has grown more sophisticated, but I mean now, to reflect on it like AJ, I had a hard time with my dad growing up, but I adored him and still do. And I think AJ's struggle is like that, because he genuinely does love his dad. And the same things that make his dad such a powerful criminal also make him a larger-than-life figure that brings a lot to that dynamic, and AJ is overwhelmed by it. So to answer the question in a bit of a roundabout way, while it's grown and changed, I think there's always been something or some things deeply personal in it that, as Jordan said, are colored in by the Italian-American dynamic, but are more universal.
Well said. Anything on that? I know you're the non-Italian here.
I'm not Italian. I'm Italian adjacent.
But do you have anything to say on this?
A little bit, maybe not quite so directly, but, I found myself, I was pretty token as a Jewish kid, mostly in high school, and extracurricular things even earlier. And I always found myself with a lot of Italian friends. I really liked going to their houses for parties. It was very different from what a party at my house looked like. That didn't mean that I didn't like what my family did. It was just it was very different, despite the cultural similarities between Jews and Italians.
And there are a lot, I feel.
There are quite a bit. My family doesn't really do that.
Okay.
The abundance, that's not how we celebrate.
There are almost no two different events on Earth than Italian Christmas Eve and Jewish Passover. I can't think of two more.
Yeah, but even still,
but
even in the realm of culturally Jewish, typically there is far more abundance.
Sure.
My family's just never done that, and so. And I just mean the over the top. I mean, we always have a delicious meal.
My mom goes over the fucking top.
But that's correct. But I think that is something that the cultures typically share. My family doesn't.
Yeah, your family's normal.
That's a hilarious statement. But
in that sense.
Yeah, or at least just moderate. But the same draw I had to my Italian friends growing up, I feel that same draw to The Sopranos. I see, not from the mafia standpoint, right? But of that, I would have had no idea. I still don't, whatever. But I still feel that same draw. And I still find myself constantly surrounded by Italian-American people. So here we go. I've just always been adjacent.
It's funny, all my friends growing up, and I would say even a majority of my friends now are Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
Always was the case. I'm from Long Island, as mentioned many times on the podcast. And when I would go over my friends' houses, I felt like it was just a bizarro version of my own house. Like, it was just like, oh, I get it. This basically works the same way. Obviously, some Jewish traditions are different, and there are other more culturally significant things that are different. But I was
They're not putting pork ribs in the gravy.
Well, yeah, there you go. But I was like, it was very much the same. There was really nothing to get used to. It was culturally the same.
Loving, warm,
right,
funny.
The mom kind of runs things. Dad's out
there's
working,
a lot of similarities that way.
When I was 13, I picked up a book about stand-up comedy, and the first chapter said, if you're Jewish or Italian, don't even spend the money, put the book down, you're good. So I always took that with me. That's funny.
My best friend growing up was a kid named David Goldman who went to Catholic school with me.
I also went to Catholic school, so there you go.
Boom. And the joke between our mothers, respectively, and Jewish and Italian mothers broadly was the differences are simple. There's similarities, but a Jewish mother says, if you don't eat, I'll die. And an Italian mother says, if you don't eat, I'll kill you.
That's
Correct.
funny. All right, getting back to Leah's email here. She writes 2 more extensive, beautifully written, articulate paragraphs. I want to invite her on the show. That's how good this shit she's writing.
Fifth host.
However, we do have a finite amount of time on the retrospective. So, Leah, I want you to listen. You're a fan of the show. I promise you, either in a future retrospective or some other moment in our show before we wrap up the Sopranos podcast, I want to get to your other 2 paragraphs, and I will read anything else you ever send us. So I promise I'm going to get back to the rest of your excellent emails. She talks about class and immigration, all this great stuff. But her last sentence here, thank you for indulging me, and I'm looking forward to the Season 5 retrospective and Season 6 episodes. I also really hope you all will pick another show to dissect once you've covered The Sopranos to your satisfaction. The vibes of this podcast are, as the Utes say, immaculate.
Oh, thank you, Leah.
Thank you, Leah.
Very
Great
sweet.
email. And you
Love
asked
it.
some really killer questions.
Thank you.
Anything you send, I will look at, and I promise you we will get back to the other stuff you wrote in your email because it's so good. I just have to move on here. We have a guy named Dave who writes us regularly. He sends us. I can't read every little message he sends, but he comments on our Facebook stuff. He writes us emails. I got 2 from Dave here. One longer, one very short. Hi guys, Dave in Linfield, Mass. Here. Just finished your episode in Camelot. Not one of my favorites. Haha, heard that before. I actually always kind of hated it. And oddly, it's the one that has me writing you. I seriously think this is one of your best episodes. The analysis was fantastic, and the way you tied several Easter eggs to JFK was splendid. The movie poster, the miscarriage, one other I can't recall. By the way, thank you for getting Paul's mic louder.
You're welcome.
After listening to your review of the episode, I went back and watched it again. I have a new appreciation for the episode. Now, what I find is that I actually enjoy the Junior and JT storylines. It's the Fran F storyline that I hate. She's very annoying, but the Tippy thread is hilarious. You brought up how uncomfortable the Happy Birthday song would make the viewer. Yep. I thought of a similar scene in Breaking Bad where Skyler sings in the office party for Ted. Equally uncomfortable, having me lean on fast forward. I think it's the stupid rendition that does it, no matter who is singing it. I love the way this season serves to ramp up tension between New York and New Jersey. Really sets the table for an awesome final season. Okay, folks, when you get to top 10s, my number 1, in 2 Tonys after dinner in the parking lot.
Absolutely.
The waiter tells Paulie and Chris to go piss their money away at blackjack. Paulie gives the best in response to the waiter calling them fucking assholes.
I agree.
I love this whole sequence because it's a classic Sopranos writing with great detail. Bill's $11.84. Waiter comments on the $16 tip. Chris obviously plops down an even $12.00 and walks out. Can't wait for Marco Polo. As an Italian-American, I find it very entertaining and look forward to hearing you walk through the episode. P.S. There's a lot of talk about AI these days and how it can replace all kinds of professions, engineers, anchormen, actors. Maybe someone could re-release Proshai Levushka. What do you think, Jordan?
Oh, man. I think you're right on, David. Honestly, I would just like them to... Oh, I don't want to fucking hash this out again. I'm going to get yelled at. I would just like them to cut out that scene. I just think the episode's fine without that scene.
There you go.
It's just... Let's just move on.
All right. I'll ask ChatGPT to rewrite Proshai Levushka without that scene.
Thank you.
And we'll see what happens. There's another one from Dave, much shorter. I just laughed at this one. Hi guys, had to point this one out. Just watched the episode where Uncle Zio passes away, season 5. I believe that's also in Camelot, right?
Yeah.
If you are unaware, Zio is Italian for uncle, making Uncle Zio totally redundant and the equivalent of Uncle.
All right, there you go.
Maybe the underlying message from Chase is just say uncle. Regards, Dave in Linfield, Mass. Thank you, Dave, for continuing to write us.
No, it's only a little funnier than a character named Uncle Junior.
All right, and my favorite for last. This is our friend Alan from the Netherlands.
Alan.
There's a little bit of a story here with these emails. We love you, Alan. You're one of our favorites, and I'm glad that you always deliver. This one's a little on the longer side, but it's Alan, so here we go. Basically, for a little context, Alan writes us fairly regularly, and we had gone a little bit of a longer stretch than normal without an Alan email, so I just wrote him to check in. Alan, how you doing, pal? You okay? How are you? We haven't heard from you in a bit. And he writes me back, hello, Chris, Paul, and Jordan. It's very kind of you to inquire about me. I feel almost like an honorable member of this thing of yours. I'm doing.
You are.
You are, Alan. I'm doing okay, thank you, and of course am still listening as avidly as ever to the pod. After episodes 1 and 2 of season number 5, I compiled some notes and thoughts in response to the three of you playfully ganging up on brother-in-law Brian and myself in reference to the question of your collective antipathy towards the feds. However, I thought I would keep my Tinder dry for a while in case other issues came up. For a few episodes, nothing did until this week with Marco Polo, when you all decided to poke the reposing tigers once again. I hurriedly dug out my notes and in my head had been busily concocting a devastating and dazzling retort when, hey presto, I saw your email. I'm busy putting the finishing touches onto the letter and I will probably send it in a day or two. In the meantime, as an amusing side note, I have 3 boys who are all in their 20s. Sons 1 and 3 have both watched The Sopranos a couple of times, and we've had long discussions about it. However, son number 2 is the contrary one, and so he watched just about every other prestige TV series while snubbing Sopranos. Then early this year, he finally succumbed. Curiosity got the better of him, and he began a methodical watch-through. Of course, he loves it. We began discussing it, and he revealed that he listens to a podcast after each episode. I casually inquired, which one? The Sopranos podcast with these 3 dudes, quote unquote. He is about to finish season 3. I told him he might be in for a bit of a surprise when he hits the listener feedback episode.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether he will be delighted or embarrassed.
That's very funny.
His son's name is Otto, so Otto, thank you for listening to our show. We love your dad. I don't know if that's weird for you. You're probably I probably am way off on the accent here. I thought he was also English, but he lived in the Netherlands. I'm not entirely sure, but either way, we love your dad, Otto. I do love you guys and your podcast. So anything I might say in my forthcoming letter, which I'm going to read, should be taken as good-hearted, rigorous intellectual jousting and not as bitter critique. Ciao for now.
Oh, we got that from collective antipathy, Alan.
Yeah.
By the way, Chris, I would be interested in maybe at some later stage discussing aspects of Mad Men, seeing as you recently mentioned that you were busy with the watch-through. Would love to talk Mad Men with you, Alan.
All right, let's get on to the joust.
Another boring show. I fucking love that thing with Otto.
Oh, yeah.
That is
Isn't that
so
hilarious?
cool. Yeah.
That his
I
son
love
just
it.
happens to listen to our podcast. It's so awesome. Otto, write in if you're listening, buddy. That's SopranosPodcast@gmail.com. TheSopranosPodcast@gmail.com. All right, Alan writes back as an English... Uh-oh.
Pussy?
Yeah. As an English wit and raconteur once put it, there are no sympathetic characters in real life. Hello, chaps. Alan here. As always, I'm thoroughly enjoying the podcast. However true to form, I do have a couple observations and quibbles, so here goes. Now, to those of you who feel like this this might be a long email. However, the reason I'm really going into it, is because this is going to lead into our next discussion topic. So, you'll see why I'm choosing to put
I'm
it
nervous.
here.
Chris is shuffling
okay.
multiple pages.
As always, I'm thoroughly enjoying the podcast. However, true to form, I do have a couple observations and quibbles, so here goes. As early as episode number 2, I was already relishing your pugnacious delve into season 5. You came out the blocks gunning for brother-in-law Brian, and perhaps me as well, by truculently reaffirming your antipathy to the feds while purposely colluding in an indulgent attitude towards the New Jersey mob.
Yeah, the feds suck balls. What do you want? Those guys suck.
Colluding with the New Jersey mob is the show.
I almost suspect that you are stubbornly clinging to this position despite yourselves in reaction to Brian and
It's
I
not stubborn. They suck. What do you want?
having the temerity to question you on it.
Now I have to look up temerity.
I also talked to
I
my
have to look up
brother a
pugnacious.
lot, and so it comes up a lot.
I just love that this guy has such a stellar vocabulary, and our response is, the feds suck balls! Is there a more American response to that?
Fuck you too.
Oh!
Joking aside, I think this debate gets to the heart of one of the show's deeper explorations, namely the duplicity inherent in the individual and in the government. Conformist viewers watch the show and live out a fantasy of unrestricted cavalier behavior and brazen irresponsible self-interest. This is something that in real life has been drummed out of them in favor of the illusory American dream. Watching the show is a convenient substitute for actively defying society's pliers. Now that might sound a bit holier than thou, but I would include myself in that, as David Chase probably would too. Even the mob guys
I already have responses. How long do we have to wait until we can say anything?
We can break, but we're almost at the end of the paragraph,
All right,
and I'll let you counterpoint. Even the mob guys themselves need the yoke of a code to provide restrictions and handy excuses.
The show doesn't present this as a fantasy escape. I mean, their lives are so clotted with, the God, I don't even know where to start. There's so much conflict within these men. No one is watching the show saying, I wish I could live that life. I wish I could be this guy. It's all the difficulties and all the violence and all the ways in which you hurt people. It's all the seeing the ways in which you're tempted and then manipulated. This show, we have fun with these guys, but the show is very much about how problematic not only their life is, but all life is. It's not a fantasy escape. It's not.
Yeah, what fantasy is long-term parking?
Right. Or really, there's any of these
truly.
episodes, you know?
Yeah, well, I think Alan's onto something about how we want that escape, but then, there are these complications. I think Jordan's right. Remember in the test stream, Coach Molinaro, he says to Tony, I always knew you'd take the easy way out. Chris, what does Tony say?
Hasn't been easy.
That's the show.
That's
the show.
Yeah. Well said. I was going to actually bring that up too, Paul. Great job. Meanwhile, the FBI, fictional and real, have no interest in ridding America of the mob. That would be like a turkey voting for Christmas.
That is correct.
I love that.
However, they must appear to be aiming at that while enjoying the ride, the expenses, and the kudos. The state does not want to actually solve the problem either because it deflects attention away from governmental shortcomings as a perpetual, supposedly worse sideshow. That's an astute point.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
I like to believe that the initial intentions of the FBI, its agents and the likes of Zellman, etc., were probably laudable, but that reality and weariness leads to compromises and self-preservation. However, in theory, that never extends to murdering those who get in your way or interrupt your pursuit of greed. This is why I can't have any sympathy for the mob guys, particularly seeing as it not merely strictly business, but often gratuitous. For example, during the iconic scene when Furio rampages through the massage parlor, they cut back to Tony sitting in the car. Hearing the mayhem, he reclines in his seat and takes a celebratory drag on his cigar. I actually don't believe this would happen in real life. Instead, it is artistic license, but such that it is intended to further iconize Tony and legitimize him through an empathy we deep down know we should not be encouraged to feel. By season 5, we're watching Tony be attempting to defy the inevitable. We in our hearts want him to, but if he did so, the regularness of his life would eventually bore us. We would be watching ourselves instead of the Cavaliers. As a side note to Tony being a struggle, the same raconteur also said, it's no good running a pig farm badly for 30 years while saying, really, I was meant to be a ballet dancer. By then, pigs will be your style.
Sure. Listen, there's some legitimacy to that. I agree. Maybe that's not exactly how that kind of thing would go down. But the difference is the people that live the criminal life, whether they're the people running the massage parlor or whether the people in the mob, itself, that's the contract they're operating under. You're taking, opposition to this idea that, the mob kills people or does violence to them when things don't go their way, where they cross the rules, whatever's going to happen. The FBI kills you too. The FBI killed Adriana. I mean, really. It's a more indirect course, right? They're going to do things to you that are going to basically drain your life away anyway. Look what's happened to every informant on this show except for one guy. Okay, Ray Curto. That's it.
Right.
Here's what I agree in some parts, disagree in others, but where I can at least see eye to eye is kind of that cognitive dissonant hang-up. I just can't feel bad. I don't feel that way for The Sopranos, but I struggle with empathizing or sympathizing with characters like Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. I can't connect to that film because I don't understand why he doesn't just go see his daughter. Like, just go see your daughter. There's a very clear right thing to do, and you're choosing the wrong thing. And I really don't connect to that. So I can understand where our pal Alan is at in terms of not being able to get there with The Sopranos. I just don't agree in this sense.
I think there's a lot of interesting points made. I don't know if it will be true with Brian when we can get more dialogue on it. It might be that we're emphasizing some different things, but we might agree more than it appears. Because I think for Alan, and at least speaking for myself, for me, this show is a joy to watch. It's a lot of fun. It's just as much fun to chat with you guys about it, but there's a moral struggle. Yeah. And there's no easy answers. In some ways, it's about maybe trying to ask the right questions.
Well, that was such a peaceful and diplomatic answer. I hesitate to read this next part.
But it says Paul's a piece of shit.
It says, update! With an underline in bold.
Uh-oh.
I've just been listening to your review of Marco Polo. You simply could not resist indulging in a fresh bout of poking the Brian and Alan bear, could you? So
poking a bear is dangerous. Making fun of you and Brian is fun.
So, okay, chaps, I'm taking the bait. Picture me rolling my sleeves up.
I'm picturing it.
You refer to Russ Fagoli as a charmless, snobbish, boorish, freeloading hypocrite. Indeed he is. However, these are personality flaws that you and I witness around us in everyday life. Yeah. And, if we are brutally honest, also once in a while within ourselves. You contrast him with Tony Soprano, the life and soul of the party, there with the charm, the jokes, and the bonhomie. You use this to justify your overlooking the murder, the crime, the wrecking of lives, the adultery, and the avarice.
Oh my God.
You adopt a lofty tone and declare that a moral dimension is irrelevant because this is...
You didn't murder anybody at the party.
This is about...
Okay, Jordan, come on.
You adopt a lofty tone and declare that a moral dimension is irrelevant because this is about who would one prefer to hang out with at a party. Well, I do not buy that because the reason that Tony is so able to be affably twirling his sausages is firstly that he dodged 15 years in the can, and the contrast of Tony B. lamenting his estranged daughter because he could not be there for her is right in front of us. And secondly, that the being an effective organized crime boss gives him riches, cachet, prominence, and instills fear, and thus opens many doors. Had he conversely chosen the honest life, he probably would not be so avuncular and social. He would be a regular punter, like you and me, who struggle, make ends meet, and get weary.
And you wouldn't have a show to watch and enjoy, and you knew every step of the way exactly how it worked. But you walk around there in the Netherlands in your shoes and your diamonds, and you act like butter wouldn't melt in your mouth. And you didn't want it to get ugly. Too late.
Oh.
Give me a fucking break with this moralizing. It's boring.
I don't know.
It's boring and I don't buy it.
Are you trying to say that if Tony wasn't who he was, he'd be like a boring regular person like us? Yeah, but that's why there's not a TV show called Jordan Hugh. What do you want?
I agree. By the way, I sometimes do get this question. I'm not
Alan's...
refuting it to Alan or Brian, but I sometimes get this question: why do we watch this show? Why do we need a show about a gangster? Why do we glorify gangsters? Now, before I quibble with whether or not it glorifies them, here's my glib answer to that glib question. It's the rest of you are boring. The rest of you sit around and moralize about this stuff, and nobody fucking cares. I'm serious. This is dull.
I love that you're so fired up because he's coming back at you.
I know that it's a visual bit on an audio podcast, but my face is like beet red.
He's like a puffer fish right now. It's great.
His eyes are as big as Buscemi's right now.
Oh! We're almost done. He specifically addresses you, Paul. The show's writers clearly crowbarred Russ Fagoli into this scenario. Why? So that easily impressionable romantics could assuage their inner conflict about rooting for the baddie.
Crowbarred?
Chase himself admits he is fascinated by mobsters and mob stories. This show is him asking why Americans are so drawn to this mafia myth. You three epitomize this because despite your urbanity, your insights, and your decency, you cannot help but yearn to be wallowing in that pork store along with these brutal knuckleheads. Thus you have fallen into the trap the writers laid out for you. Why didn't I? Possibly perhaps because I am not American or Italian or am so invested in the myth that I began a podcast about the show. This time, I have to ask Paul why he was, in particular, so vehemently dismissive of Fagoli and Father Phil. Is there something you want to tell us, Paul? Clearly, the writers love using such characters as red rags to draw out viewers' vulnerabilities. I had to ask myself if there is anyone on the show that I have a similar reaction to. Is probably Gloria Trillo. Why? Because I have the same ambivalent feelings toward my own mother that both Tony and David Chase had. She comes to resemble Livia to Tony the same way she resembles my mother to me. So that probably explains why I keep coming back to the show, and you guys are breathing fresh new life into it. Thank you for that, and please keep up the excellent work. Alan.
Damn it! Now I can't be mean.
Anything else to Alan? Who's going to lead us into our next subject? Last words to Alan?
Last words to Alan.
He's going to write back, so, it's not really the last words. But.
Yeah, Alan, I think you got the wrong impression. We don't want to be in the pork store with these guys. We enjoy watching the show, but it's not like a surrogacy. It's not like we wish we were there or that we wish we were them. I don't want to be Tony Soprano. I celebrate his highs and I lament his lows and I am frustrated by him and I love him, but not in a way where I am living vicariously somehow. It's not that kind of a thing. And it's not even an idolization thing. I'm aware that goes on for some people, but I think I speak for everyone in this room where I say my investment in the show only goes as far as its characters and its story and how I can reflect on my own life, but in no way do I want my own life to become their life in any way. And actually everything Tony does and enjoys, I would probably hate. I don't want to be a philanderer. I don't want to be a violent man. Do I want to party a little bit more in my life? Yeah, but not to the extent that it would harm others. Watching their lives play out in this show is very satisfying in this way, and analyzing it on this podcast is very satisfying, but I don't want to be in there. It's not that kind of thing.
Yeah, and us ragging on the FBI more so than the mobsters doesn't mean we think the gangsters are morally superior than the FBI. The point is that they're all terrible, and all of them have a hand in the controversy and the issue and the deaths, and it is far more interesting to analyze it within everybody's bad than I think it is a good versus evil story, especially because we have plenty of those outside of The Sopranos, and if I wanted a good versus evil, I'd watch that.
That's ultimately what gets me about this argument.
You say that all the time. I'll give you credit for sure.
But no, you hit the nail on the head. It's like there are no less than 6,728 shows on television where the cops are the guys you're supposed to root for. The Sopranos is not that show. It just isn't. We would be following Agent Sanseverino. It would be called the Sanseverinos, and it would be about the Italian experience.
You don't have to make it up.
Yeah.
You'd call Law and Order. It would be called Blue Bloods. It would be called
Chicago
Chicago
PD.
anything.
Yeah.
They got a lot of Law and Order in Chicago.
Where I will
Not a Law and Order Chicago.
Where I will give Alan credit is in his incredible vocabulary and in the idea that perhaps our attitudes are colored by the fact that we're Americans and Italian Americans, but
I think Alan, you're clearly a intelligent and literate guy. I would only offer, I think, and I know that we dig in deep on this show, and I love doing it with my friends. I dare say we might be overthinking it a bit. An example for me, politically speaking, I'm fairly liberal. My favorite movie is Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver is a very reactionary movie. I sometimes think about it. I don't go into like a deep thing about like, oh, what does this mean? What am I hiding from myself or do any of that? It's probably nothing. It's probably just that the experience of that movie is very compelling to me. So I think that we can kind of let this go. I think there's different readings and it's totally fair. But one of the things about this show, kind of like Taxi Driver, is that it confronts a lot of these moral issues, but with an enigmatic quality that leads to the discussion afterwards, as opposed to what we seem to be obsessed with in this culture now, and I fucking hate. There's a right way to read this, a wrong way to read this. There's a right way to tell a story. There's a wrong way to tell a story. There's a right way to do a feminist critique and a wrong way. There's none of that. There's just that and your experience of it.
Amen. I love that. With that, it's time for a top three.
Whoa! Top three! It's top three! It's top three! Top three.
Top three characters / performances.
Oh, this is easy.
Yeah. Lily, do you want to start us this time?
You got it, dude. Number 3 is Carmela. Shocker.
I have one honorable mention. That's Vince Curatola as Johnny Sack. He stepped up in a big way, showed us something very different this year. But my number 3, Steve Buscemi as Tony B.
Yeah, I did an honorable mention for Carmela only because I had to include the 3 I included as my top 3, but Tony B is also my top 3. Sorry, he's also my number 3.
Tony B.
Quick honorable mentions for Carmela and Johnny Sack.
Yep.
And number 3, Tony B.
And just before we get to our number 2s, for those of you who may not have listened to our other retrospectives for whatever reason, weird shit happens, we exclude Tony Soprano from these because he, as the series lead, and he has so many dynamic moments and scenes, it would be impossible to have a top 3 without him in a year. So
He's the assumed always
he's
number 1.
correct.
Yeah.
My number 2 is Tony B.
My number 2, Drea Di Matteo as Adriana Lacerda.
My number 2, Chris Moltisanti.
My number 2, Dre DiMatteo is Adriana Lacerda.
My number 1 is Adriana.
My number 1, Michael Imperioli as Christopher.
My number 1's Adriana.
My number 1 is Michael Imperioli as Christopher.
Okay. So
Mucho.
we all have the same 3, just kind of
we can
different orders.
we can go in any order here. You want to start with some of the ones that only made honorable, like Johnny and Carmela?
Sure,
start
yeah.
with Johnny.
Let's start with Johnny. We had a long conversation about the character Johnny Sack, but I think what Vince Curatola brings to this show is a great energy, and I thought he showed us something different this year. That's why he was an honorable mention for me. It was a different Johnny, and it was exciting and dynamic.
Yeah. Real specificity in this performance. It's not just a generic gangster performance. It never has been. His arc has been wonderful, and he's a fundamentally different character than he was when he started on the show, and seeing his growth has been really satisfying, and we must credit the actor with that. Now he is a really complicated, threatening character that's going to be dealing with some serious shit as we enter the next season. In fact, he's one of the ones I'm most excited to watch.
Carmela?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her arc is really interesting for me this season.
Yep.
And she executes it flawlessly as per usual.
Yep.
And
She's incredible. I mean, you can just... the writers can just put anything on that piece of paper, and she will slam a home run every time.
every time.
It's just
That extends into Nurse Jackie. I mean, she's tremendous. And sorry, everybody, she'll probably be in my top 3 for season 6A and B. I know we have a no spoiler policy, but I think she's incredible. So as long as I can vote for her, she's in my top 3.
That's great.
We were talking about the sausage twirling and all the dynamism and how funny it is, but when Carmela legit gets upset with her mother at the end of that episode, I was right there with her. I felt it. She can make me go anywhere. Whether it's fireworks or something very muted, which a lot of her storylines are because of how, well, I guess ensconced aspects of her life are. Like, you stay in the house and you do this and that. Matthew Weiner ended up stealing a lot of that imagery to do stuff for Betty on Mad Men when she was stuck in the house. And it was great storytelling. So, Edie Falco just nails it every time, including in seasons like this when some other stuff, like stuff with Adriana and Chris, is more fireworks.
All right. So I think we all had the same 2 and 1, just different orders, right? So
So we have to do Tony B.
Tony B. That's right. Yes, we had Tony B as our number 3. We talked at length about what Tony B and Steve Buscemi brought to this, but just to touch back down, I thought this season was essential. I thought this is right up there with Ralph Cifaretto and Richie Aprile as one of those 1 to 2 season characters that really brought a lot of depth. And as I said earlier, there could be a show about Tony B that works because Steve Buscemi brought that to the performance.
I'm curious to see if after the death of Adriana and Tony B, one that Tony is directly responsible for and one that Tony is indirectly responsible for, I wonder what the cumulative effect on Tony Soprano's character will be. Because I could interpret this symbolically as a death of the rest of his humanity, or a lot of it. I don't know. Again, I'm not that well versed in the upcoming seasons of the show, if this really fundamentally changes Tony as a person, or if somehow he's able to just kind of absorb this and keep on going as he has with so much else. But it felt to me like that was really Tony B's significance on this show, was to provide us with, again, another really thoughtful, emotionally intelligent character that we went along for quite a ride with, and to see, how that came to pass with Tony. I don't know.
Yeah, the big difference between Richie Aprile, Ralph Cifaretto, and Tony Lindetto is that we really grow to love Tony legitimately, I think. Ralph is charming but still really despicable, and Richie Aprile isn't even a little bit likable. And
Tony also loved Tony B.
Correct. So there was more love there, which brought another light, which is why I think he could hold his own show, which is why I think we are we sad when Ralph is gone? Richie certainly not. The word wouldn't be sad. I'm sad when Tony B dies. I understand why. I think it has to happen, but I'm going to miss him in a way that, forget Richie, and Ralph I miss for other reasons, I guess. He brings an electricity to the show, but it's not a longing for him.
Yeah.
That in a way that I will long for Tony B.
Yeah.
And Buscemi had to do all that and add another wrinkle, which was that you could see this guy functioning operationally as a gangster.
Right.
Tony S has to be credible when our Tony says to him, "Guy like you, brains, balls, if you be fucking straight with me, I could use all that." So the loss of him is also the loss of this possible other trajectory. I don't know, another Earth 2.
Right.
Where Tony B survives and can still help Tony S.
And we've watched the full tragedy, right? We saw him be so close to getting out and just getting usurped by the life in a way that, again, we did not go through quite such depth with Richie or Ralph.
Let's talk about Chris and Adriana just as a unit here, because they're either our number 2 or our number 1, and what a season they had. This season won them both Emmys. What a journey. Every moment mattered for them on screen this season, and particularly the two obvious big standout episodes are Irregular Around the Margin and Long-Term Parking, which I suspect at least one of those, or two, or both, may end up on another list later this episode.
We'll see.
But what a journey for these two, and these actors brought everything they had to this.
I figured that these would be the top 2, and I don't know. This is like by a nose. Sorry. I
had trouble deciding which one was going to be 1 and 2,
yeah.
Which makes me so happy that we have a direct 50-50 split on this. I love that. That 2 of us thought Adriana was first, and 2 of us thought Chris was first, and boy, it's more like 1A, 1B for me.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just it's great.
And so much of it is them together, but they're seen separately. Part of it is Chris. The thing that I could say inches Chris out, I think I just wanted to pay that respect to Imperioli, because he very rarely has made my lists, in spite of Chris being such a dynamic.
He's one of my favorite characters. He's never made my top 3 list.
And Dre DiMatteo was big last season on my list, was that Adriana's storyline, of course, is particularly focused on her being a rat, being compromised. Christopher's storylines have a number of different threads. There's problems with Tony. There's problems with the gangster life in general. There's problems with Paulie. There's problems with his relationship. And Imperioli doing all of that, dealing with, of course, also being freshly in recovery and struggling with all that, is a lot.
He's juggling a lot.
Yeah. And it's hard to make it all dynamic. And I was very impressed with it all. That said, what Adriana does in this season is very special, so to have her on the list is also important to me, and of course it's an homage because it's my last opportunity to say for that actor, like, congratulations, this was really sterling work.
Well, and their chemistry. Whether they're having a rare moment of sweetness with each other or he's beating the fucking shit out of her. Their on-screen chemistry was so believable and so real. That's why it all hurts so much.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is that they just had a connection.
Yeah. Well, and this is, you know, the end of Adriana, the end of that arc. I mean, that is that, you know, she and that relationship have been with us since the show started. And I think you're very much invested in, well, what's going to happen to these two and how are they going to navigate all these things? And it comes to such a tragic end, and it's so well performed. Yes, particularly in those 2 episodes, but it's also the cumulative, product of it all, right? It's the accumulated business of all of their struggles, all of their moments, all of their nice moments throughout the entire series that finally comes to rest here in the 5th season. I gave the edge to Adriana, not because I thought Christopher's performance was of any less quality, again, 1A, 1B, but because it's the last opportunity I'll really have to talk about her in any significant way, I suppose, and also because she was the character that made my guts churn, right? She was the character that made my heart ache.
Yeah.
You know, I felt for Christopher, but I feared for Adriana. Like, it was really, it was another level, you know.
He had more decisions to make. Mine's purely bias of, like, it was hard to put him number 1 with Adriana still in the picture because he keeps beating her up. So Adriana got number 1.
Yeah.
What's the podcast we listen to?
Oh, Brian Baumgartner.
Brian Baumgartner. Off the beat.
Hell yeah.
He's Kevin from The Office, for those of you who don't know Brian Baumgartner's name. He does an interview with Dre DiMatteo where she explains a lot of the process that went into this. And particularly, to give credit to her performance, she was hired as like a one-off. Just to be Chris's girlfriend, maybe an episode or 2, show up.
The hostess.
But originally the hostess in the pilot at the restaurant. And they thought she was too waspy for the role, if you can believe that. And she's such an intuitive actor. She knew that she needed to show more, so she shows up the next audition. She tells this story in the podcast. Her hair is all done up, big Jersey style. She's chewing on some gum. She's got the heels, all that stuff.
She's got the diamond nameplate.
Exactly.
Necklace.
And she made them see it. And as an actor that is so important and so impressive, it is not easy to go from a one-off, 1 to 2 shot guest star thing into a series regular. That is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
So, fuck yeah, Dre DiMatteo. Thank you for what you've contributed to the show. Thank you for Adriana. And we will miss Adriana. And I am terrified for everyone else that this is obviously a incident that is going to pay dividends one way or the other beyond just her own death. This is a big, big, big moment in the show. Her death cannot be understated. So thank you, and great performances this year. I want to go directly into our next top 3!
Top three.
We are going to top 3 moments.
Ooh,
Moments.
moments.
I will start us off. Honorable mention, Melfi judges Tony in the episode 2 Tonys. Tony pushes the issue after asking her out, makes her explain why she won't go out with him, won't take no for an answer, and then she tells him exactly why she couldn't be in a romantic situation with him without judging him, and he says, "Fuck you, you fucking cunt." So that's an honorable mention.
Real nice, Chris.
I have another one as an honorable mention, but I happen to know that my honorable mention moment is in somebody's top 3, so I won't mention it until they do. But number 3 moment, Tony has a panic attack in therapy in unidentified black males.
I have 2 honorable mentions, and then my top 3 all come from the same episode, so I'm just going to give the listener a heads up there. My first honorable mention is it's sort of a flashback memory moment in All Happy Families when we see the camera pan around the table at Tony's really lame fucking joke. And the camera kind of lingers on Feech's face.
Yes.
And Tony realizes, oh, this guy's not on my side. This guy's against me. Something has to be done. Great moment.
Great moment.
The second honorable mention, which really should have qualified for one of the top 3 because it really affected me when it happened, but it just wasn't at the level of the other 3, is it's I can't remember which episode this is from. You guys will know immediately. But Carmela comes home to an empty house. She's got groceries and a potted plant in her hand.
All happy families.
Thank you. And she looks back at the driveway, and she has a flashback moment of little AJ going down the driveway on his tricycle. Hey, Mommy, look at me. And then a flashback of her younger self, and she screams out, Anthony! Right? And then she flashes back, and she goes in, and she walks into the empty house. And it just, ripped my soul out when I first saw that.
Yeah.
Which episode is that?
All happy families.
That is All Happy
That's
Families. I'm sorry.
Episode 4.
Yeah. But my number 3, which is... I can't believe this moment didn't make it. But yeah, my number 3, my actual number 3, and all my ones are going to come from the same episode now. I'm sure this is probably a higher rank for maybe somebody else, but if not, I'm glad I'm mentioning it now. This is long-term parking. Chris sees the struggling family at the gas station, and the miserable man that he could be with the plastic bag full of convenience store groceries getting into the car.
A couple of quick honorable mentions. Unidentified black males, Tony and Johnny Sack in the car. Test Dream, Tony and Coach Molinaro. Marco Polo, Tony and Carmela in the pool. Moment number 3. Unidentified black males, Tony has a panic attack in therapy.
There you go, buddy.
I will point out to our listeners that this is the only time I will do honorable mentions, of which I have 3. So,
Yeah.
First honorable mention, Vito at the Yankees game, looking
Oh,
like a
poor
little
Vito.
kid. Poor Vito, but also fuck Vito.
Yeah,
but
fuck
also
Vito.
poor Vito. He looks so cute.
Poor Vito.
Aw.
And fuck him.
Right in the mouth.
Next
Oh.
honorable mention.
It's bat night.
Under the bat.
Carmela negotiates for $600,000.
Yeah.
And last honorable mention, the game of Marco Polo.
Very good.
Great.
Fabulous.
And your 3.
And my 3 is Tony B and Christopher at the farm.
Yeah.
I
really like that episode.
It's a great episode.
I haven't talked enough about it. It's really good.
Yeah. My number 2 moment happens in Where's Johnny, episode 3. The last scene, Don't You Love Me? And then that
And the silence.
fade to Junior as he starts tearing up fucking gets me going even now just talking about it. Great moment. So well acted, so well written. That's my number 2.
My number 2, it's not a pleasant moment at all. It's the opposite of pleasant, but it's just burned forever in my mind. It is literally the murder of Adriana in the woods by Silvio, which, as horrible as it is an immortal moment. Horror. Yeah.
Number 2, Adriana is killed.
Yeah.
Number 2, Sylvia shows up for Adriana.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
So that's hilarious. My number 1 is a different... We've all picked different aspects of Adriana's death. Mine is the moment she realizes in the car.
Yeah.
When the car is moving to a place that is clearly not a hospital. Yeah, that's my number 1.
Oh, who's
I started,
number 1?
so
Oh,
yeah.
okay, so my number 1... my number 1 is it's a whole scene. It's Adriana's confession to Christopher about what's been going on all this while. And I like the moment. Just, I don't know. I think that's my favorite moment all season. Of just, the culmination of it all. And it's stronger to me. Yeah, it's great. What can I say?
Number 1 moment is lunch at Vesuvio. Everything you have is because of my fucking sweat.
I went a different route. My number 1 is Tony B leading the doctor, telling the doctor why Adriana couldn't have filleted Tony.
That was in my honorable mentions. I wrote it as Tony B saves the day.
Yeah, he does a really good job there. It's surprising and fun and funny and correct.
Well, the start is the attending. You can explain how it's not medically possible.
Yeah, it's so good.
Sorry, are you a physician?
I love that moment. I love the guy who plays the doctor.
Yes.
He's so good in both that and the Nick
He's
and
great.
Chef Kiss.
All right. Any elaboration on any of this, or?
I like one of the among many that I like the scene at Vesuvio. We've talked about it a few times in this retrospective. Is not only is Tony seeming to, whether he consciously decides it or not, he's like, Carmela needs to be reminded that she's not falling out with a husband that she's having a hard time with. She's falling out with a gangster. So what's equitable is what I say is equitable. What's fair is what I say is fair. What's just is what works for me. I feel like it reminds the audience of it too. Don't forget who you are dealing with. Because he's ruthless in that moment. I want what I'm entitled to. You're entitled to shit.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Moving on here, we are getting shorter on time, so I'm going to just bring up a couple topics, and we'll each give like a quick thought on it, kind of more rapid-fire style, before we get into our final top 3. But just some other things we have to touch down on if we're going to talk about Season 5. Real quick, let's touch down on the kids' journey this year. Meadow, AJ, Finn. Meadow's engaged now. We can talk about the suitcase. You had something you wanted to say?
Lily was actually something to say.
Screaming at the podcast. She was not on that episode.
I was not on that episode. I was a mere listener of that episode.
Which one?
Unidentified black males, yes?
Yeah, that was the suitcase.
Yeah.
And I think there was while I was overall most 9 out of 10 pleased with how that conversation went, I thought there was a big missing piece of the Finn Meadow conflict.
Okay.
And you all went into why Finn went into that conversation kind of not ready to have that kind of conversation. Meadow had just found out her parents are getting a divorce. And I think that that's really something important because all of her stability, regardless of how aware she is of who her family is, who her father is, she's going into that conversation like the one relationship that was stable. I used to brag to my friends that my parents were still together, and now she's feeling this possible separation with her and her partner. Of course she's going to freak out about a suitcase. Yes, it's the whole conversation is ridiculous and fueled by heat and
chili,
my goodness. But her core is breaking.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was a really important piece to consider because
I didn't think about that.
It can be really easy to, especially because her voice is just naturally more shrill, and she, I think, kind of stokes it longer than I think Finn would have. I think there are legitimate reasons why, more than the heat, that she would come into that argument irrationally.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't think of that at all, honestly, in terms of where she was coming from.
You know, this is 2023. I'm a progressive man. You know, this is I'm a modern man. This might have been a time once long ago I would have said, Lily, shut your mouth and go make us a snack. But instead I'm going to say, I missed something there and you brought it to our attention. And I really appreciate you enlightening us and sharing that with our audience.
All due respect, you're dumb.
And if you guys are ever having an argument, don't fall asleep.
Are you asleep?
That would have ticked me off too.
Well, let me spring off of Lily. Where are these kids at this season? They are both reacting to this divorce, or what's about to be the divorce, right? This is the way Meadow, which is reacting, which I really didn't consider until Lily brought it up. And AJ is. We know a lot of kids that have behaved this way, right? And it's gotten much worse, right? He was never the best behaved, most well-adjusted kid.
Nope.
And now talk about a core being destabilized. Meadow's much stronger than AJ, right? So what for her is a little argument with her boyfriend that turns into something a little bit more tumultuous, right? AJ is... might as well just be flying away off the planet, right? He is completely horrible to Carmela this season. He goes to actually live in a different house with Tony, and Tony can't take it either. He has to move back, right?
He is the kind of kid, since the beginning of the show, that tests boundaries and needs to be reined in, and there is no rein right now.
Right. He's been totally destabilized. He ends up only in an okay spot because the two parents get back together, but he has not gained any more maturity or independence for all of that. We see little glimmers of, I hesitate to call it any kind of hope, but he's running that party with his friend and,
event planning.
Right, event planning, right. I mean, his college prospects are basically nil, as we know from Wegler. He ends in a good spot because his parents are together. He ends in a bad spot because we know nothing about this child's future. What he can do, what he's capable of. He has no skills. He has nothing that he can really do.
Tony hates the event planning, but he's grasping onto some hope that at least it's something.
They're grasping onto anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But AJ's destiny is still in flux. Meadow, less in flux. Still, I don't know. Does anyone feel completely confident that Meadow and Finn are going to walk down the aisle? Obviously, no spoilers, but...
No. I don't feel confident in that, but I feel confident that whatever Meadow does, she'll figure it out.
Yes.
I
agreed.
don't know that that's true for AJ. AJ could end up really bad. I don't think Meadow could if she's in charge.
I agree.
Well said, guys. And Lily, truth, honestly, jokes aside, thank you for adding that context there. As a child of divorce, I feel that, and I'm sorry we didn't mention it initially. Touchdown quickly on the gangsters who were not in the class of 04. Just a quick touchdown, boom, boom, boom. Sil, Paulie, Vito, I think, are the big guys this year. Silvio, of course, Tony's steadfast number 2, the killer of Adriana. Just pretty steady, exactly what you expect from Silvio. Great scene in All Due Respect with Tony, where he confronts him about his issues with authority. Sil knows when to lay back. He knows when to press. And boy, can he be the button when he needs to be the button on the very rare occasion.
I met with a friend of, I was going to say friend of ours, friend of mine, named Rob Asaro. He lives out in Parsippany. Grew up in Soprano country. We've been talking about The Sopranos for years since it aired, and we got to talking about it today. We were having coffee, and I don't know how we got on to talking about Silvio and this very scene in All Due Respect, where he calls Tony out on XYZ, and Rob said something, he put it in a way that I had never thought of before. He said, Silvio's the only real loyal gangster. Indeed, loyalty reflected in telling your boss the hard truth.
Mm-hmm. And as we saw from Tony's reaction, it's hard to tell Tony Soprano the truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Silvio knows, has amazing restraint. He only pulls it out when he has to, which is the only reason why he can talk to Tony that way. Because Tony knows Sil wouldn't say it if he didn't need to. Because Sil really only talks when he has to.
Paulie had a pretty steady season. Ken, a friend of the show, sent me a meme that said, to most people, A24 is a film production company, but when I hear A24, that's what I imagine Paulie Walnuts would say to Kiefer Sutherland on the street. Hey, 24!
Very good.
Commendatore.
I think what I like most about Paulie is that he basically remains completely unchanged season to
Right.
season. I think it's intentional. This man has no arc. I say with love.
And,
this is not a criticism of the writing.
When Chris is looking for an arc in season 1, Paulie's the one who has to tell him, "Man, nothing did. So what? Nothing happened."
There you go. I think Christopher changes so much season to season. Obviously, he goes through a lot here in season 5. Silvio, we see growth from, right? And like we said, he's got 2 of the best scenes in this season, right? He has, of course, what he's been ordered to do in killing Adriana. He also has this confrontation, shall we say, with Tony in All Due Respect. Paulie's exactly the same every season. He is a flatterer who only looks out for his own unprincipled self-interest, and he will just do whatever keeps him around the longest. He's the eminent survivor. That is just what he does. Flare-ups here and there that kind of operate on a cycle, but he's just the same dude. He's the same guy he was in season 1 as in season 5.
Yep. And Vito. Big moment for him. He's captaining. He's in charge of the Cursed April crew at this point.
Yeah, still cursed.
Yes, because Ralphie, he's taken over for Ralphie now, running the construction site. He's worth mentioning because I feel like this thing in the car is not going to be kept. There's consequence
it's the gun
to
in
that.
the first act.
Correct.
To use Paul's favorite dude.
It's the letter behind the sink.
That's definitely an important and big piece of information. We haven't had this in a mob show, or even, I don't think, a mob movie up to this point. A character who is, if not gay, performing arguably gay acts.
Never this explicit.
Yeah.
Arguably?
In the movie Little Caesar, actually, there's been a lot of talk that between Edward G. Robinson and one of the other gangsters, there's a homoerotic connection, but the movie's made in the 1930s. Of course, anything that's even remotely there is merely suggested.
Right.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. It's so interesting. It comes up in a very dangerous context for Vito that anybody would know. Then it becomes dangerous for Finn because Vito's vulnerability makes him immediately a shark. It's part of a great episode, too.
Yeah. Yeah, Unidentified Blackmail is a great episode.
It's like, it's sort of controlled in that one moment, but I think you're right. The audience senses that it's probably, something's going to happen. Even in the next episode, there's a bit, I think, where we see Vito watching a woman strip at the Bada Bing, and it's like, well... you know.
And look, not to paint anybody into a corner here or to broadly categorize people, but it's also important to note that the closeted gay gangster is working in construction, and that's a different culture than I think. Let's just say this: I've worked a lot of different gigs and jobs, and one of the gigs I've worked more recently has me dealing with a lot of people in construction, and the amount of pronouns in the signature of your email that I get from people in the entertainment industry does not exist in the construction industry.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? It's a different corporate culture. So I think that also adds to an element of big fat Italian construction hard hat guy in that environment. It's a traditionally masculine role. So there is a sense that this could be dangerous, actually, for a lot of
Vito
people.
And the security guard has to be kept under wraps.
Correct.
Yeah.
And Finn knows about it and has told Meadow. So, big development. I think that's worth remembering. I remember when this season ended, I was worried about where that was going. So, let's see. Two other quick topics here. One, let's quickly touch down on Junior's decline, which was markedly severe this season. We started seeing bits of dementia with the head injury last season, but as of Where's Johnny, Junior is in a different place. He has that nihilistic breakdown after using the funerals in
Right, he
Camelot.
gets medicated and then he goes to nihilism, yeah.
Right, because he realizes that he's standing in a grave, that's his quote, and then by all due respect, he's out to lunch. Tony can't even keep up a moment-to-moment conversation with him about the predicament he's in. Junior
And for the first time in a while, Tony really seems to want his advice.
Yeah.
In that moment, right? And Junior can't keep the thread.
Yeah.
Even. It's sad.
It's sad. I don't care who it is. It's sad to see somebody's brain go, especially knowing where they start.
Yeah.
It's just hard for everybody.
In a just world, Junior would be of sound mind and body, accounting for his crimes. But
failing that, he would have died already.
Yeah.
Right. I've brought this up many times on the show. Junior is the kind of gangster who was meant to have died a gangland death much earlier than this, rather than suffer the indignity of old age. Mm-hmm. You know.
But it's well played by Dominic Chianese, and it's sad to watch. One has to wonder if there's a time gap between this and season 6, what kind of condition he's going to be in.
Right.
By the next time we pick up with these characters, it's something.
In further response to an earlier bit of listener mail, this is the kind of stuff that you feel like you would want somebody in your life for, right? Listen, we get married for all kinds of reasons. You get married for love, companionship, you want to start a family, could be financially sound, anything like that. Junior has foregone all that to live his own individual lifestyle, to be content in his solitude, to perform his duties as the boss of a family, or prior to that, a capo in a family, to the best of his abilities. But now he's subject to all the same things that we're all subject to. Old age, infirmity, the degradation of the flesh. He has no one there to support him through this, so it is especially harsh. Because there's no one that's going to be there with him all the time. It's going to be either a hired nurse or whatever gangster they have posted to him in this moment. It's very lonely. And you have to believe that it's not, even as advanced as his dementia is, it's not full-blown dementia. He has lapses where he is coherent again, and I think it's a lonely place to be grasping around in the dark. His fate is arguably the worst of anyone's, because he's still in there.
Yep.
Contrast it with it dragging on beyond this season. At the end of the season, at the beginning of the season, Carmine Sr. got to die golfing with he was going to, it would have been a great afternoon if he hadn't died.
Yeah.
It would have golfed with my friends. I was having some eggs, I smelled burning hair, out.
Yeah. Good
Yep.
night. No.
Yeah. And Junior's in house arrest. I mean, he might as well be in solitary. It's terrible.
Yeah, he's got the legal and the health. It's not even like well, at least you got your health. It's
Right.
Yeah.
He has nothing.
He's losing it, and he has nothing. That's correct. Last topic here before we get to our final top 3. Let's just quickly touch down on therapy this season. This is the through line. This is the show starts in therapy. We had some pretty powerful. That the first part of the season, Tony was not in therapy post divorce. He was actually trying to woo Melfi unsuccessfully.
Prince of Tide.
That's right. Gets back in All Happy Families. Gets some credit from Melfi for showing restraint and irregular around the margins. I think the next there's some other good moments in there. Tony's talking through the Gumar situation. She's trying to Fran Felstein, and Melfi's trying to get him to let go of his anger toward his mother and forgive her and move on, and he can't. Then we get into depression as rage turned inward. She helps him with the rage, and she helps him through that panic attack. So some good therapy stuff. Here's what I'll say, generally, and then I'll pass the ball to you folks. All of the therapy scenes and Melfi scenes were fantastic, and I especially liked when she had that. It was one of my top moments when Melfi had to rebuke Tony's affections and judge him for the first time and explain why morally they can't be together. Generally speaking, therapy with Melfi, while the scenes are all great and the scenes have value, has taken a little bit of a back burner to a lot of the action comparatively, I feel like. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, therapy occupies far less real estate on the show than it used to. But I think appropriately. And you don't want to add in therapy unnecessarily, otherwise it becomes tedious.
Right. If it were just, that's the format, we got to have Tony in therapy this week.
Right.
It's there when it needs to be. Sometimes it's only once an episode. Sometimes you go 2 or 3 episodes without it.
It's a lot with a little.
Yes.
I think most of the season in terms of therapy is about that unidentified black male scene where he seems to go into a panic attack in there, and they draw it back to guilt and shame. It's powerful, it's interesting. It also points to a weird vibe that maybe we'll have to continue to thread out that I get at the end of the season, in the last episode, where Melfi, not wanting to know, unwittingly, facilitates Tony B's murder. She says to Tony S., like, your son, your cousin, vis-a-vis them, whatever it is, own your feelings. And Tony does. And he's like, cool, get this shit done.
Yeah.
That's what comes of her saying, I'm going to help this guy and mark all these things out over here. I don't want to know the details. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like Jordan mentioned during our long-term parking episode that he felt that, for him, that episode marked the crossing of a Rubicon, wherein the answer in Jordan's mind to the question, can this all be redeemed, Tony in particular, the answer is pretty much no. That's a signal, anyway, that Jordan's getting at this point. I tend to agree.
Yeah, I feel so often in therapy, he's not really healing. He's just, I don't know, he's like fucking finding a way to be worse somehow sometimes.
Well, and that's ultimately the point, is how tenable is that?
Right. Where
he is taking these great lessons that would help me, help Paul, help Lily, help Jordan, and then the message is, she's right. I should go kill my cousin.
Yeah. It's allowing him to not only work through but also justify his actions, right? I think this is not an informed opinion. This is going to come out a little bad. There are some people that go to therapy, and rather than work through their problems, this is not most people, I'm saying some. There are some people who go to therapy, rather than working through their problems, they come away with justifying all the things that are the worst about them. And insisting that the world operates under the premises of what they've been emboldened to do or to behave in which through therapy. And I think Tony's one of those people. Right? So you have people who are very narcissistic, they could even be a sociopath, something like that. They go to therapy and they have almost the reverse experience, right? Where, they work through some things, but it's more about how the world should serve them and treat them a certain way, right? There's a certain entitlement that comes from it. I think we get a little bit of that from Tony. Listen, we have a great moment in this season where he has a breakthrough about his past and why he's been holding on to this guilt. That's a great moment. It shows the beauty of therapy. But I don't think that is what Tony's really getting from the experience.
Look how he reacts when she judges him in Two Tonys, right? That just tells you the difference right there. When I go to therapy, my therapist, I know that she's being non-judgmental because that's how she remains objective and is able to tell me what I need to hear. To someone like Tony, a sociopath, basically, he takes the non-judgment as, oh, okay, I must not be as bad a person as the world thinks I am.
Correct. Well said.
You know. But anyway, it's worth noting that that's what's going on. Great scenes with Melfi, particularly the panic attack scene. I enjoyed seeing her in that capacity. She jumped boldly into crisis mode very well, and I enjoyed how she rebuked him early on in the season. Their scenes are always great. We're just not getting perhaps as many of them as we used to, but quality over quantity. And with that said, we had 13 episodes this season. Let's pick our top 3 episodes, baby. Top 3 episodes. Who wants to start?
I'll start.
Jordan?
Honorable mention. Irregular around the margins.
Ooh.
My number 3 is Marco Polo.
All right. Honorable mention, Irregular Around the Margins and Marco Polo. Number 3, Unidentified Blackmails.
Wow.
My honorable mention is Marco Polo, and my number 3 is Unidentified Black Males.
My honorable mention is Marco Polo. My number 3 is The Test Dream.
Number 2, The Test Dream.
Number 2, The Test Dream.
Number 2, Irregular Around the Margins.
Number 2, Irregular Around the Margins. And your number 1, sir?
Long-term parking.
Long-term parking.
Long-term parking.
Long-term parking. There we go. All right. Well, so what I'm hearing in different orders. Well, first of all, everyone had the same long-term parking, so we'll get there. I heard a lot of Marco Polo honorable mention. Did someone have it as a number 3? Or?
I had it as my number 3.
Number 3. Okay.
Yeah.
Were there any other honorable mentions that were not also number 3s?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. So let's talk about Marco Polo. Just quickly. We talked at length during that actual episode about how it has that dreamlike sweetness to it, and
Well, that's it.
the party we all want to go to.
That's right. Listen, I was tempted to put Unidentified Blackmails on my list rather than the Marco Polo, and actually Unidentified Blackmails, which is an outstanding episode, didn't actually make my top list, even though, of course, it's fantastic television.
Well, a top 3 in this season is impossible.
Correct.
We're leaving out something preposterously good.
Right. Marco Polo, for me, represents what we're all fighting for. This is what's at stake. This is the beautiful party at the beautiful house with the beautiful family. It's the party we all want to attend. This is what Tony B wants. This is what Tony Soprano wants back. This is what Carmela wants back to some extent, under conditions, right? This is what is upheld. This is what is celebrated. This is the home. This is the home on display. This is what Meadow can enjoy. This is what AJ can enjoy. Playing a game in the pool for together. We're all searching for this thing. We're all playing Marco Polo, right? We all want this thing. You all want to be at this party. And, there's not a ton of action in this episode. Yeah, we got some action sequences. There's some stuff that takes place that's not at the party. But you know what? If I'm going to put in, gun to my head, any one episode from this season, I'm just going to put it on. I'm just going to enjoy it. It's Marco Polo.
Yeah.
And I just want to enjoy it. You feel, as a viewer in this, you got invited to Hugh D'Angelo's birthday. That's a very special thing. You're going to enjoy it. And he has a great time. And it's very, very sweet.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's okay, even on this show, to uphold something that is just sweet and good. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
Couldn't have done it better.
Unidentified Black Males was on some lists.
It was a near miss for me. It wasn't on my list.
It's what Jordan said when we recorded the actual episode on it. It's how you survive in Lie World.
Mm.
And part of it is what you have to project. Part of it is even, I think, what you have to delude yourself with.
Paul, when you said in that episode that we covered this in the black male being black male and the blackmailing yourself, fucking mind exploded. One of many Paul Mancini mind explosions.
That's Paul.
And I think, there's so many different things. I still love the surprise of Will Janowitz being so good as Finn.
Yeah.
and how we got introduced to that character. It has one of those moments that I was talking about where Tony and Johnny Sack are in the car, and it's dangerous, it's crazy, it's funny at times, and then at the end, Edie Falco makes me cry when she cries, and they play the Carpenter and the Douchebag song.
Yeah, it was on my list, and I agree with Paul.
Great. Test stream, regular around the margins, and long-term parking are what we're basically...
So we're going to save long-term parking for the end.
Right.
Which one do you want to take?
Let me briefly say this about both irregular around the margins and the test stream.
Yeah.
Which is that both episodes, to me, kind of go on the list in part out of respect for the fact that they fucking did this.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one should really work.
Right, I agree.
Like you can't do a regular around the margins. That they're not going to get together. Nobody's going to buy that. There's not even a B thread in this episode. Test dream, it's just a fucking dream, and it's like 10 different things happening that nobody's going to get. But they both really work, and they're worth having work, and they're compelling and enigmatic and frightening and funny and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yes, sir.
There are so many moments when you're in the entertainment industry, or you're an actor or a writer, or you're a director, whatever, where you can tend to get a little cynical. Not even cynical is the right word, but you have trouble turning off your brain, and you can watch something and say, oh, I see how the writer got there. Or, oh, yeah, they got the camera up on this swivel rig and they dipped it in and they did the zoom lens. And, you can kind of pick it apart and determine what it is that the craft has been. I don't understand, as someone who's been doing this for a while, how the fuck Test Stream even gets made. I don't understand how they wrote it. I don't understand how they shot it. It's baffling to me. And for that alone, just because it's very hard when you have that kind of brain where you're always trying to figure out the magician's tricks when they can pull the wool over your eyes. And the Test Stream does that for me on all levels. It's just a masterclass. I don't know how it was done. So that's why it's on my list. Irregular, what can you say? It doesn't require a detailed explanation in so much as it's just a bust-ass, kick-ass, fire-breathing dragon of an episode. It just pumps the gas, and you're in the Meadowlands with a gun pressed to Christopher's head. Nice
Foley work there, Chris.
Not to mention any episode that brings us the moment, you know what to do down there, is one I'm going to appreciate.
It's episodes like those two also that infuriate me when people don't at least pay homage to The Sopranos when talking about best TV shows.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, Sopranos did this so that Breaking Bad and Mad Men and all of those other great television shows could exist.
Yeah.
So you can't have conversations about those without talking about The Sopranos, in my humble opinion.
Irregular's good. It's just great TV. It's an awesome episode. It made my honorable mentions. Test Stream, it's one of the episodes of The Sopranos series that stands out most in my mind because it's like, how do you take the viewers of this show and bring them up to that level and make them care about something that is basically purely symbolic? Just pure poetry is what you're watching on screen. None of it exactly makes sense. It's almost like you're watching like a choreographed dance routine at times, right? It's just like, okay, I see all these pieces broken apart. They're coming together in new ways. Some of these people are dead. Some of them are alive. Some of them are Annette Bening, right? What am I supposed to do with any of this? And what you end up doing is a little bit of how you would interpret like a Seurat painting, right? Like, okay, all these little splotches of color, all these little dots, I make meaning out of them, right? It's kind of like they're opening up the Sopranos toolkit and saying, here, you create meaning from this. What does this mean to you? Tony comes out with one understanding of it, and you probably come out with a better understanding of the show as a result. People that don't really like the Test Stream episode, I think they're used to something that has a linear, sequential plot, and they can't really do that. They don't have that skill. That's not to say that only intelligent people can do that. It has nothing to do with that. It's just folks that can derive meaning from symbols, from emotional color, from individual moments, and can kind of make that something that becomes a whole out of like all those individual parts. It's really beautiful TV.
If I can add just right on top of that, I think that there are also people who are comfortable with not having answers and people who
100%.
Need every answer.
Right.
There is a reason why I love true crime and I love more prestige detective true crime stuff. I can't stomach Law and Order because every answer is given to me, and I like a little more actual mystery.
Sure.
Doesn't mean if you like Law and Order that means anything about you. I'm just someone who likes absurdist theater because I'm comfortable not knowing what that means or 100%. What it answers, and I think that there's a comfort level that comes to that for people. I
agree. I also love that with an episode like Test Room, because it is essentially poetry, because it's all split up the way it is, two people can have completely different interpretations of what that episode means or what its individual symbols mean. Both can be right. Neither are wrong. And you can also have someone that doesn't actually get one specific meaning from it and just appreciates the pastiche of symbols and scenes and lines and characters that appear and all that stuff, and that's fine too.
You know where that doesn't work? Patsy Parisi's reading in All Due Respect.
Let's not. I don't want to.
Whole can of worms.
The long-term parking. Let's just belt it out here. Look, what can I say? It has everything a great Sopranos episode should have. While we're eating ice cream sundaes and watching television in our living room, a woman is being brutally murdered in the woods. While we're making hand job jokes and kissing in a closet, we are choking a woman to death after finding out she's been ratting to the feds. While we are talking about constructing a beautiful new home, we are destroying a family from the inside out. It's everything you need about a Sopranos episode as far as crossing the mundane with the life or death stakes. It's told masterfully. The way they reveal the information is masterful. And it has surprise, it has shock, but it also has inevitability. It has everything you want, not just in a Sopranos episode, but in a great drama. This will likely be on my top 3 if we do a series retrospective. That's how good it is. So, long-term parking for me.
Well said. End of that episode, they're in the woods. The image of the woods, of course. Tony seems to have trouble catching his breath, sits down on like a stump.
Yeah.
I think Carmela puts a hand on his shoulder. She says, you all right? What does Tony say? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
How much do you guys trust it?
Not at all.
That's how much I trust moral absolutism as a reading on this show. You're welcome.
The performances in long-term parking are outstanding. I think it's got some of the most lingering images on the show.
All 3 of your top moments were in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the episode that affected me most, and I think a lot of people feel that way. And that's not to diminish anything else in season 5. It's just, it is a singular episode. It's incredibly brutal, and in a way, in like a sickening way, it's also an episode that's sort of inevitable. You're waiting for this to happen the whole time. You just don't know exactly how, and now you're seeing the how.
It's one of those episodes that, if you know nothing about The Sopranos, or very little, you'll know the words long-term parking. It's just unforgettable along the lines of college, university, employee of the month.
Yeah. Of what we've covered so far, yeah.
Of what we've covered so far, I could add to the list for sure. Yeah. But I won't. However, it's just, it's 3 words that will give me chills the rest of my life because I will always associate them with how I feel watching that episode.
Yeah.
Amen to that. And with that, that is our season 5 retrospective. Any final thoughts on this? I just thought season 5 was a kick-ass year. I am sad that we're reaching the end, but we have 2 seasons worth of material coming at us, so we still got a lot left. Season 6 might be my favorite altogether if we count part 1 and 2 together. So season 5 left me wanting more, and I'm excited for all of it. Any last impressions of season 5 before we sign out?
Yeah, not to end on a down note, but I'm getting the feeling, and I'm not well versed in season 6, I'm getting the feeling that there is a darkness in this show that is kind of just implacable. Right? And I mean more than just the casual darkness of being like a show about gangsters who kill people, right? I just mean to say, whatever this show is trying to say about life, the sum total of existence, I think that needle is starting to get more nihilistic as the show goes on. And even though the season ends on kind of like a bright note, We get a little bit of the Van Morrison, the glad tidings, and things seem okay for Tony. Things seem okay for Tony, but things don't seem okay overall. Right? And I don't know that we can ever get back to a better place, and I'm not sure that the show wants us to.
Well said. The show continues to surprise. It will continue to surprise.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's pretty much it. I'm going to leave on this note. Rest in peace, Jack Mazzarone. Thank you all. This has been Season 5 of The Sopranos and The Sopranos Podcast. I'm Chris D'Amato.
I'm Lily D'Amato.
I'm Paul Mancini.
And I'm Jordan Hugh.
And we will see you for members only. We will probably take a brief hiatus between seasons, but we keep it short, not too long. If you have any comments or you want to be featured on another episode, please write us at that's TheSopranosPodcast at gmail.com, at TheSopranosPodcast on Facebook and Instagram, and at Sopranos Podcast on X, Twitter, whatever the fuck you want to call it. We're there. Thank you all. We really appreciate our listeners. This has been a hell of a journey. Season 6 opens with a bang. Cannot wait to get there. Love you all. Have a great time. See you for Season 6.
How about this humidity?
Got myself a gun.